Welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota.
Welcome to the Ag Innovation News Podcast. It is brought to you by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota. This podcast is designed to shed light on innovations and value-added agriculture, and I think we've got a unique take on that today as we take a look at a very common agricultural commodity here in the state of Minnesota and really take a co-product from soybeans and turn it into something else. So we're going to learn a whole lot more about that. We've got a few folks on the microphone with us today. Harold Stanislawski with us from AURI. Harold is the Business and Industry Development Director for the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute. We also have Ella Van Kempen with us. She's been with the West Central Research Outreach Center in Morris, Minnesota, the past couple of years. She'll be part of the conversation. She's been working in this effort as well. And we'll also visit in with Mike Reiber with AXIOM and Amino Organics Fertilizer. We're going to have a full perspective on this story. Harold, let's start from the beginning. The idea of soybean meal and utilizing it as a liquid-based fertilizer. How did this concept come together?
Yeah, good question, Don, and good afternoon to you. This all started really as the soybean industry has expanded its soy processing capabilities with the biofuels and the soy meal plants that have been built in the region in the last few years has put more soy meal on the market. And so the councils, Soybean Research and Promotion Council of Minnesota, asked us to say, hey, what can we do to develop new markets for soybean meal besides the traditional markets of feed and such? So the fertilizer area came up, and we started looking at soybean meal and dry applications for lawn and garden fertilizers. 3 fertilizer formulations were developed. They work really, really well. We've demonstrated them for the last couple of years at a number of places across the state, mostly community college campuses where we put these on, and it was just a great demonstration of how these worked. But then after we completed that work and we found a formulator who could make those fertilizers in the state, we also started to think about the liquid fertilizer market to say, how could we use a liquid soy meal fertilizer that comes from a soy concentrate and make it into a powder and then use it in dosatrons in environmentally controlled agriculture, basically large greenhouses and so forth. So we identified 2 companies across the United States and even internationally that had products that included soy in them, but utilization was lagging a bit on the adoption of these. So we worked with a company called Nature Source out of Texas and a emerging company here in the United States called Fertilizer that is currently based out of Spain. Fertilizer, by the way, is interested in expanding their manufacturing and processing into the United States. So we had a chance to work with that company, and they shared some of their formulations with us. And then we started the process of looking for good demonstration sites where we could employ these technologies and get some familiarity with the product. So that's what we did. And then in addition to that, we worked with Mike Reiber from Axiom, who did the market assessment for liquid fertilizers to say, how big could this market be, who's using it and why, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of liquid fertilizers in the controlled environmental ag space. So that's where we are right now. The demonstrations are complete, and we worked with Ella Van Kempen there at the beautiful University of Minnesota Morris West Central Research and Outreach Center, and she agreed to take these 2 products and demonstrate it for us in her horticultural gardens that they have there. So that's a little bit of the background of where this all started.
Ella, bring you into the conversation. I'm told the gardens at the research center is just a sight to see. Tell me about the work that's been done, and what's your take on this this use of liquid fertilizer.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, the garden in Morris is a public display garden. It's kind of become a gem of the Morris area, a little destination site for people to visit, whether students are coming on campus for the first time and maybe it's their first time in the small college town, and the garden is a good escape and a beautiful place to be. A little bit of history on it. So it was started by the horticulture scientist named Wes Gray. If you were to visit back then, this is 60s or 70s, he had it very data um, centered. So you would see big rectangle plots with straight lines of flowers just for trialing, which would be an easy way to trial. But then 45 years ago, another horticulture scientist jumped on board, Steve Poppy, and he kind of turned the garden into a more aesthetic display where you want to show home gardeners what they can do with their outdoor spaces. They started getting things, grants, donations, that allowed them to build more garden structures, arbors, paved pathways, gazebos, more garden structures, fountains, water features, things like that. So it turned into a more pretty place to be instead of just this science-centered horticulture trialing station, which brought a lot more visitors out. A lot more donations came in the door, a lot more grant money for research. And then we also are an All-America Selections trial ground and display ground. So this kind of comes in two parts. So in the 1990s, we served as an All-America Selections display garden, showcasing flower varieties that are proven to do well in this regional climate, which is, it's kind of harsh. Maybe you know in Grand Forks, it's sometimes the summer's variable, sometimes it's harsh, sometimes it's nice. So they sent us past year's winners that were proven to do well. We display those for home gardeners to see, and those are not on trial, so I don't collect data in the display garden. On the flip side of that, in 2011, the West Central Station was selected as an All-America Selections trial ground, and we are the only trial ground in Minnesota. So again, that data becomes very valuable, and we are the northernmost in the United States. These are on trial. So this one's kind of a cool feather in our cap that we were selected as a trial site. We're comparing, maybe they send me 2 or 3 petunia varieties, let's say, and 2 of them are named and they're on the market. And then the one they send me, it's an entry and it's not on the market. And we're comparing how that petunia performs versus the others. And they'll give me traits to look at and things like that. So whenever I give tours in the garden, I always stop by the All-America Selections bed, and people find that kind of fun to, you can see visual differences between the flower types, and you can even maybe make some guesses by yourself. You know, what would you score this? Is this better than? Is this equal to? Things like that. So, yeah, thanks for mentioning that. The Morris Gardens are a place to be.
So you've done research on this particular project. What kind of work has been done? What are you looking for?
So with the liquid fertilizers, Harold and I have been in cahoots over the past couple years. They've just been nice enough to drop off some fertilizer at the front door. And I've been using it in kind of a non-scientific way, I guess, but just integrating it into my fertilizer usage instead of just completely swapping out what I do use and then swapping to organic, the nature source, or the Ferticell. And we've had good results. Is I think Harold has come out a few times to the garden and he's been able to see, you know, how our containers and hanging baskets are doing, how the stuff in ground looks, you know, where I used it versus where I didn't use it. And as the garden community kind of trends towards a more organic alternative, I think this is a good place to be, you know, doing research and kind of seeing in the ornamental landscape as well how flowers do. And I know we talk a lot about agriculture and we talk a lot about crop, but this is another space where home gardeners are able to enter the chat.
Is there different things we're looking at? I'm thinking like if the material clogs or those kind of things. Is that part of the conversation?
For sure. For the nature source that I used in the middle of May, I used that one in the greenhouse, and I was able to actually skip a step completely because I didn't have to pre-mix anything before. I just used our Green Tech injector, and it's already a liquid at full, what's the word, concentrate of the nature source. So that one was really easy to use. I look for in liquid fertilizer ease of use and if I'm able to adjust the rate. So I'm working with all different sizes of plants. So maybe I started some seeds in January and maybe some I started in April, and I want to be able to adjust that rate according to how established the plant is. So in liquid fertilizer, I look for that trait. And like you mentioned, clogging, we use a big 150-gallon nurse tank when we're out in the garden. And sometimes it gets clogged. And with the Ferticell, I didn't notice that. So that's a huge thing. It also skips probably an hour or two of us having to clean it out and triple rinse everything. So
Harold, when you look at this work being done at a public facility like we have at the Morris Gardens, how important is it to really take it to that next step so we can bring a product to market, those kind of things?
Yeah, it's really important to get input from people like Ella, who's a horticulturist there at the university, because they can tell us things that we should know. Do we need to include more things on the directions, let's say, and in use protocols? Uh, if there was clogging, we would want to know that and how we could take care of it. Sometimes odor can become an issue, and we want to know about that. The ease of use, how did it perform? I think performance is the key. How did it perform? And I think, Ella, one question I would have for you is you taught me a little bit about bloom burst. I never thought about that, but bloom burst is kind of important to the floriculture folks. Can you just talk a little bit about how these fertilizers are used in that regard?
Ella, Harold asking about bloom burst. How is our fertilizers used in that area?
sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing Harold. Yeah, so certain parts of the season I'm prioritizing um, NPK, which is coming first. Farmers and other growers are probably going to agree with me when early in the season I'm using nitrogen. So that was Nature's Source. It had a 10-4-3 mixture, which is something I needed to promote that stem and foliage growth before I promote flowering. For Bloom Burst, which I call Flower Power on my Fertilized Fridays, you need a little bit more phosphorus in that mixture. So typically, if I'm using a synthetic or commercial fertilizer, I'll try and find something like a 10-30-20 to use. And then the Ferticell that I was given was a 5-10-10. So we used that in the beginning of July to closer to our big annual horticulture night in order to promote those plants to flower so they look pretty and they're ready when visitors come into the garden. So shifting around the seasons and using, what's high in potassium for plant health, what's high in nitrogen in the early part of the season, and all the soybean base, it's adjustable. So sorry, Harold, I couldn't hear anything that you were saying.
Can you hear me better now?
I can't. I can read
No.
your lips.
Wow.
Ella, I'm curious, how would you compare the soybean-based product to a synthetic fertilizer? And I'm curious, would you use these kind of products again if you had a choice?
Yeah, so in 2023, before I jumped on board here, I was actually an intern, but I was lucky enough to be part of the AURI soybean experiment that they were running. This was with an alfalfa, another organic fertilizer, alfalfa pressed. They used ensiled and they used fresh. And then they had a standard and they used a control group. So during that experiment, they did both in greenhouse and in ground with vegetables. In the greenhouse was a soybean experiment. Out in the plot, it was broccoli. And after running the statistical analyses, we found that there was no significant difference amongst all the treatments besides that control group where we just used water. So going from that 2023 experiment and there being no significant difference, that's kind of what you're looking for in the organic fertilizer. It's comparing to, your standard fish emulsion, your synthetic, your commercial fertilizer.
Mike, if I can bring you into the conversation, talk to me about some of the research, some of the analysis that you and your folks have done in this particular area, and what kind of results have you seen?
Well, the future seems very bright for natural product type fertilizers because the folks who are using kelp and fish emulsion, they're a very finite audience, and both of those products are kind of hard to work with for a variety of reasons. But what we're excited about is most of the growers that we talk to are interested in raising their crops more sustainably. and Ella is a great example of that. Secondly, this soy protein that powers the liquid fertilizers is full of amino acids. It's full of nitrogen. It's full of carbon, which is really great for the soil, nitrogen for the plants. So what's been happening, that's the soy as an ingredient has never been more affordable than it is now. In fact, some people are saying it's at all-time lows. So we're kind of excited about the fact that this ingredient for a fertilizer is sustainable, it's affordably priced, and it makes plants healthy and soil healthy for that matter.
Mike, have you worked extensively on this as a dry formulation versus a liquid formulation? Is there any differences?
Yes, we have worked extensively on it as a dry formulation. The big difference is that we're using we're looking at soy protein isolate, and essentially what it is a powder that mixes very easily with water. And soy protein isolate is used in human food and animal food. It's very highly safe. But the big benefit is that with the soy powder, we can get higher N percentages than we can with the meal because it's highly refined. And that's what I'm really excited about. There, Ella mentioned that she did a 5-10-10. There are soy protein isolate fertilizers that are available that are as high as 16% nitrogen. So when growers are looking at at their nutritional cost, they're calculating cost per pound of nitrogen that they're applying. And because of the situation with soy meal being affordable, it's a great value proposition for growers who want to increase their bottom line, who are interested in raising their crops in a more sustainable manner, and who also don't want to have nitrogen that is in a form of nitrate or ammoniacal nitrogen that contains salt. Oh, nitrate contains salt, so salt burns their plants, and that's not a good thing. So
It kind of leads into what I was thinking about. All this focus on sustainability, being a soybean product. Do you see that there's a natural role for that in the marketplace versus a synthetic?
oh, absolutely, there's a natural role, but what we have to do is we need more people like Ella who are out there educating and telling their stories about this, because many people think of soybean meal in granular fertilizers, and but they're not aware that soy products could go into these liquid fertilizers, and that's a huge story to tell.
Ella, any recommendations that you would want to share after having your experience with this?
Yeah, I guess I'd just say pay attention to your plants, and whether it's an agricultural crop setting or an ornamental flowers, grasses setting, each one kind of requires a little something different in terms of fertilizer. Some are heavy feeders, some are a little bit more vulnerable or sensitive. One rule that I abide by is listen to the plant's needs, and this fertilizer experiment has pushed me to pay attention to their reaction to what I'm feeding them because it's different than what they've been used to. So
Any final thoughts, Mike, that we should take note of as we looked at the opportunities perhaps here?
Well, one final thought relates to what we just talked about, this barrier of trying something new. And the greenhouse growers and the controlled environment agricultural growers that we surveyed um, are very satisfied with what they have presently. They've used it for many years. They know it works. They know exactly what it does. And so the importance of demonstrations and trial programs like the ones that Harold put together with Ella and other growers are just incredibly important to this opportunity. Um, a related thing is that we believe that this liquid soy has great potential in field with row crops. So particularly Minnesota row crops, because it strengthens the soil. It builds the soil. It provides a carbon source. It provides food for the microbes. It provides amino acids for the plants, which are growth stimulants. And that's the next chapter that I'm really excited about, because Ferticel's products are predominantly sold in row crop agriculture, and they're already doing it. They have a lot of success with regenerative farmers who like regenerative agriculture, and I think there'll be a really great next chapter.
It's interesting. I was at Farm Fest a few weeks ago, and I had a conversation with one of the farmers in the Minnesota soybean tent, actually, and this is one area that he saw as a great potential anyway for using his product. So it's nice to see that's an opportunity. Well, great information. Our thanks to Ella, to Harold, and to Mike. Great chance to learn about what's going on in this arena. And thank you for listening to our Ag Innovation News Podcast. It's presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute, AURI of Minnesota. I'm Don Wick.
This has been the Ag Innovation News Podcast, presented by the Agricultural Utilization Research Institute of Minnesota.